sorrowful incident that left many Ugandans dead. And it wasn't just about ordinary Ugandans, even the journalists were targeted. The amount of human rights violations, abuse was extreme. And then, of course, the suppression of civil society and the media. From 14th of January, Uganda went silent. No one knew what was happening where. And it was a very difficult time. No signal, no voice. Everyone was in the dark. It was difficult to monitor elections, difficult to transmit results, difficult to share, difficult to make follow-ups. And it makes one wonder how. I am also an advocate, like all of you here, and it's an honor to come here and share a few insights about my experience in the last general election. I am a member of the Forum for Democratic Change, and in that vein, I want to pay homage to Honorable Nsimambi, who has been my leader in Parliament as my whip in the FDC, has been a senior member of the FDC, and very especially was also my lecturer, as is the case for all of us in this room at the law school. A very good gentleman. Thank you very much. It's an honor to share a panel with you. So, I think we can all agree. We know all the applicable laws in as regards our elections. And for me, I really would like to submit that this has been one of the worst elections in the recent past in our country. When I think about it and I reflect, I really get emotional because I was an actor in the last. We must note that elections are a hallmark in our constitutional democracy. The right to democracy, the right to express yourself, to associate with any political party of your choice, the right to offer yourself, and the right to vote are all in the Constitution. Articles 38, 59 are very clear about those respective rights. And in the last election, we witnessed so many difficult things, very difficult for us as a country and for us as political actors, especially in the opposition. It was neither free nor credible. And it demonstrated a total institutional capture of all institutions in this country, of Parliament, of the judiciary, of the Electoral Commission, of all institutions in this country. The last election demonstrated a total capture. I must note that electoral reforms have for long been the subject of discussion in Parliament, among the civil society, among generally right-thinking members of our society, because we are all very discontented with how elections are carried out in our country. But many of the reforms, actually, I must say all of the tangible reforms have never seen the light of day. And that demonstrates that is a result of the total capture of all institutions, including Parliament, which is mandated with this role of legislation. My good friend, Honorable Niwagaba, had for very long been a proponent of electoral reforms. Honorable Segona, there have been notable members of Parliament that have pushed for reforms. But after this last election, it makes me wonder if legislative reform can really change anything, if anything at all. And I would like to say no. I don't think that our solution lies in singularly legislative reform, because as we have seen, our spirit of constitutionalism is totally lacking. And as we have seen, no matter what form our laws take, what form our constitution takes, it only remains ink on paper and can do very little to assure us about the improving on the credibility of our elections. So, in the last election, of course, we witnessed right from the point of nomination, multiple candidates were nominated and still multiple candidates were denominated following a very questionable process for various positions of MP in some areas of the country. Some candidates were outrightly denied, with some ping pong happening between Electoral Commission and security forces to deny some people nomination. Many candidates were denominated in the last election. I think we would rightly agree that this has been one election with a wave of unopposed that has never been seen before. And every time people were declared unopposed, isn't it peculiar that it was always opposition candidates that were struck off? Isn't it peculiar that it's only opposition candidates whose seconders turned up saying that they were no longer interested, or their signatures were procured by some fraud or misrepresentation? And it's very disturbing, because when you look at that form of seconding, everything is so clear. It's so clear, there's not much written on it. Just a few sentences, and then you put your signature. And despite that, there is a process that the Electoral Commission undertakes. They verify all the signatures, verify all the NIN numbers. But in the last election, the manner in which the EC was striking off Ugandans from voter rolls, from being nominated, was very, very questionable and very extremely discouraging. For the position of the president, there were notably two women who showed interest, went until the process of collecting signatures. One of them, Nancy Kalembe, later on complained about the integrity of the EC, in that some people were asking her for bribes in order to pass her signatures. So all these things speak of a commission whose professionalism is greatly lacking. And it almost, I must painfully but honestly state that in the last election, it really looked like the EC was working as a branch of the NRM party. We witnessed an unleveled state of the playing field, with everything disfavoring opposition parties and favoring the ruling party in terms of access to voters. I'm certain we've seen all these terrible videos about how the NUP presidential candidate was harassed, about how the FDC presidential candidate was harassed, about how members of parliament, contestants, candidates were harassed in their engagements, in their movements, all speaking of how unleveled this playing field was. Only the NRM had access to state resources. A case in point is Kololo here. When the NUP dared to ask for Kololo to have their rally, so many excuses were put, and they were denied Kololo. Well, we all knew that Kololo would be denied, but I think the NUP, for trying and exposing the unleveled state of this playing field. But aside from that, political parties, it has systematically been demonstrated that our political dispensation now may be tending to a forced one-party state, because existing political opposition parties are really being stifled. They are being suffocated. iPod is really the platform where all these political parties belong. But as we followed, many opposition political parties were not able to access resources which they are entitled to by being members of iPod. Even being members of iPod, at some point the process was really being twisted for the NUP. So all that spoke about how unleveled this field was and disproportionately disfavoring opposition candidates. NRM candidates were campaigning with the DSOs, the entire security setup, the entire RDC setup, RDCs, DPCs, all were working for NRM candidates. That's the experience that we have. So, but that is not what elections should look like. The police and all these security organs must continue to remain impartial. They must be non-partisan. But in the last election, we saw DPCs executing instructions to favor only NRM. And that was very unfair. Members, the level of human rights abuse in the last election is unprecedented. It was extreme. It was terrible. Recently, I just found out that there are almost 2,000 NUP supporters in jail cells all over this country. How do we live an election like that? Many lost lives. We are all familiar with the incident at Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi's home, very pitiful and sorrowful incident that left many Ugandans dead. And it wasn't just about ordinary Ugandans, even the journalists were targeted. The amount of human rights violations, abuse was extreme. And then, of course, the suppression of civil society and the media. From 14th of January, Uganda went silent. No one knew what was happening where. And it was a very difficult time. No signal, no voice. Everyone was in the dark. It was difficult to monitor elections, difficult to transmit results, difficult to share, difficult to make follow-ups. And it makes one wonder how much longer, because it can't be like this every election cycle. So much money is lost, businesses are affected, simply because people want to take advantage of this darkness that they have created for us and making it impossible for communication. Of course, the militarization and authoritarianism in the last election, we saw so many guns, active involvement of the armed forces. Many of the divisions were put in charge of the districts where they exist, manage elections in this district, make sure these people are declared, the deployment of security forces, of course, money. The last election saw extreme use of money, extreme voter bribery, and of course to favor the NRM. If you followed, especially us in the countryside, maybe here in Kampala people are used to 10,000 shillings, but in the countryside, 10,000 shillings was changing everything. And it was the NRM giving out this money, even standing at polling stations and dishing out, of course, with protection of security. So this, together with so many other upsetting events, made our election a very difficult one, a terrible one that is almost, until today, it's very hard to recover from. So the turn-up was affected, as you know. In my district in Soroti, we had 52% turn-up, the lowest turn-up that we've ever recorded, for many reasons. One, because people realize that elections can no longer reflect their aspirations and can no longer yield the change that they seek to have. Two, the over-deployment of security made many voters shun the electoral process. Many of them just turned back because of the brutalization. Three, the knowledge that even if they cast their votes, it would really not count. So the turn-up was really poor, and I think for us as a country, that should really be concerning, because many people are losing interest in the governance of their country. So it's important to go back, build faith and build trust. But people will not trust a system that has not changed. As long as things continue to remain the same, it's the same result that we expect. And so I would speak a lot about the need for reform. But quite frankly speaking, I think we need a different political order. Because 40 years down the road, I don't think any reform can assure us about having more credible elections in our country. But nonetheless, we would speak about the fact that we need to enhance the credibility of our elections. We need to eliminate totally the militarization of our elections, which is something I don't see being done in this current NRM dispensation. It will remain the same because they seek to continue to take advantage of Ugandans and take advantage of that system so that they continue to have a grip on power. Members of the Radical Nuba, I had a huge presentation here, but because of the time, I really can't delve deep into each and everything that's here. But allow me to mention that it's becoming increasingly difficult for lawyers to practice their profession. It's really becoming a disappearing profession with the current status of the rule of law in our country. Recently, we saw one lawyer being arrested when he had gone to check on his client's premises on by the way, order on request of the client. It's becoming difficult for the ULS, for lawyers, and for all of us really to do what we should do for our clients. We need to be more politically involved, because quite honestly speaking, though you take a back seat and you're apolitical, all these things eventually affect you. As I wind up, with so much money was spent on the BVK machines, which turned out to be not so relevant and opened the way to more massive rigging. And I think that it's important for us as a country. If we are going to go digital, then we must do it credibly and do it with real good quality. Because honestly, what we saw with the BVK machines is that they delayed voting. Some of them failed, maybe conveniently. I wouldn't say that it was a mistake, maybe conveniently. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to particularly thank NTV for continuing to amplify voices post-election. Many of us don't know what mayhem these security agencies did and caused, especially in areas out of CBD, out of Kampala, but it was terrible. There are so many untold stories. There are so many people who are hurting. People were killed, people are rotting in jail, and now post-election it seems really quiet, but the pain in the hearts of Ugandans is still there. So thank you very much, NTV, for continuing to amplify voices and